All right, guys, we are here with Mr. Parabolic himself. Jason, what's up, man?
How's it going, Tom? What's up,
Doing
guys?
well.
Hey,
Appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah, it's a typical Sunday here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So you guys are both in New York right now?
Yes, sir.
yep.
Yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, but we appreciate you fitting us into your 100-hour work week here.
That's no joke, man. I really do. For a long time, I've been working those kind of hours. So whether I was building FastMed, many years ago, to what I'm doing now, we sometimes get questioned for being part timers in the investment game, but that's just not it. Pomp and I
hmm
are we're in it, more than full time.
Cool. Well, that's a perfect segue, right? Cody and I have been following you for a while, so we're familiar with your background. But can
Yeah.
you give the audience a little bit about like your background, how what you originally started working in, and then how you transitioned into the crypto space?
Yeah. So in college, I was studying medicine, finished my medical degree, got accepted to Yale, dropped out, started a company called FastMed, which is just urgent cares. And this was many years ago. Gosh, 2001, started the company, built it over 14 years, sold it in 2015 to a Boston-based private equity firm called Abry Partners. For about $500 million. So it was a pretty life-changing event for me individually. I made, private equity and venture guys lots of money too. And I got blocked out of practicing healthcare and doing walk-in medicine from 2015 to 2025. So I started a waste to energy business in 2015 just to do something different. I had a bunch of patents in robotics and synthetic polymer science. I wanted to do something that had nothing to do with like customer service. Uh, that was the whole innovation with FastMed. It was like bringing customer service to healthcare,
hmm
and I love all things around that space. But I did want to do something different that had no business to consumer connection. And this waste to energy business was super cool. Literally, raise a bunch of capital, take trash on the front end, turn it into sellable commodities on the back end, have a total business to business relationship, work on training a good team, and then just executing. So started that business in 2015. And around that same time, I met Pomp through a mutual friend that worked for Mark Cuban. And Pomp was moving back from the West Coast to Raleigh, and he thought we should get together. Pomp and I met, fell in love, and decided to start a fund managing, kind of early stage venture stuff, and that was called Full Tilt Capital, and we started that in 2015. We raised about 18 million bucks from friends and family. I put a load of money in, and we started doing early stage venture, which was really cool. And when we wanted to raise our second fund together, that's when we met Mark Yusko over at Morgan Creek Capital Management, and we decided to do Morgan Creek Digital. So Pomp, Mark, myself run a blockchain and crypto fund together, and then I do a bunch of other shit.
Very cool. So you
Awesome.
literally took no time off, right? 2001 to 2015, you built up your company, you get bought out. So you had a non-compete for essentially 10 years?
Yeah. So it was really that quick. On a Thursday in 2015, I couldn't come to terms with the acquirer, Abry, about what I was going to do if I stayed on with FastMed. They told me on a Thursday I could have a complete exit. My family was in the office on Saturday moving my stuff out.
Wow.
And I literally started the PRTI on the next Monday.
So did you already have like the idea for that, or were you just like brainstorming?
Yeah. I was always kind of doing things off the corner of my desk, and I had been doing research and work with PRTI since 2014.
Okay.
So, I wasn't sad at all that I was letting FastMed go to be run by other people in 2015. I was ready to do something else.
hmm Cool. So 2015 is a big year for you, right? You get bought out. You started
Yeah.
your next company.
Yeah.
You meet Pomp. You meet Mark. So what was it like in between that time? Did you already know about blockchain? Did you know about Bitcoin, or did you just happen to learn about that in the same year as well?
No, I had heard about Bitcoin in like 2012, actually.
Okay.
So one of our marketing guys was friends with Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss,
Hmm.
and he had introduced the concept to me, but it meant nothing to me. I think I threw him out of the office and said, "Dude, like I'm doing serious stuff. I don't have time to talk about magic internet money or video game money or whatever." I said to the guy. I remember him, and I remember the conversation. But no, what we saw was while we were investing that 18 million bucks in about 63 different companies, 50 some odd really early stage stuff, and then we were doing some late stage pre-IPO stuff. So Reddit, Airbnb, Lyft, SpaceX were companies we invested in. We saw two things happening: a lot of pro money going into blockchain, and a lot of really smart kids and people building businesses there. So that's when we decided, we were like, look, let's start to do some research here, and maybe we'll raise 25 million bucks and invest it in blockchain. And Pomp and I were buying a McDonald's in Charlotte to turn into a laundromat. And we spent 6 hours in the car together, and he just kept going on and on about like mining and this is real. And I'm like, dude, shut up. And we just kept going back and forth on it. And I think it was on the ride home from Charlotte where I said, look, I've got this startup, we're taking waste tires. I break it down. I make a lot of power on the back end. Selling power to the grid sucks. Making about 6 megawatts. They're paying me between 2 and 4 cents a kilowatt hour for the power. Why not mine? And we bought a bunch of ASIC rigs. Excuse me, we bought a bunch of GPUs, and we knew a kid at NC State named JP Barrick who ran the mining company or mining store. And gosh, JP must have been 17 or 18 at that time. I think he was just dropping out of college. He got in a lot of trouble, actually. He'd been paying kids in the dorm to put GPU miners under their beds. Yeah. He had them right. So he was blowing out all the power in the dorms. And so he ended up dropping out after his first semester or so. But he helped us build the first Ethereum mine. And that I still lay claim to be the world's first waste to energy cryptocurrency mine. We built it right here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's incredible.
That's
so
awesome.
You're taking this startup that you have, like, and instead screw it, instead of getting beaten up, like, and taking a hit on like all this energy, like, let's just use it like for our own good.
To mine, right? So it was like if you in oil you use these crack spreads. So whether it allows you to develop an objective concept around refinement, and we developed the same thesis and kind of arbitrage models for power. Like, do I sell power to the grid or do I mine cryptocurrency? And over again, it was just so profitable to take that power I was making, not sell it to the grid, but use it for parasitic load mining. We've been mining continuously for over 5 years.
Wow. Well, you guys have such cheap electricity, right? So
it's nearly free. It's nearly free. I mean, if you put the OpEx in, my power costs are probably right around 1 cent.
Oh, wow.
Right? Which is better than anywhere in the world. I mean, I don't know any place that you get power for free, essentially.
Right. Cool. So then you guys start doing this mining operation. Now, does that segue into Mortgage Creek Digital, or?
Well, it segues into all things crypto, because our initial introduction personally into the space was mining Ethereum. And once we started mining Ethereum, we were mining a lot of Ethereum. I needed a place to exchange Ethereum. So you needed an on and off ramp for fiat, because I was using some of it for operational expense. So you start to explore different exchanges, custody options. You start to, and we were running a business. This wasn't a hobby. So I needed insurance. I needed, tax strategies. I started to think, do I just want to hold Ethereum or do we want to mine altcoins? And then I jumped down the rabbit hole into Bitcoin. And so from there, I had a pretty comprehensive end-to-end understanding of like the technical aspects of mining, what is mining, the trading of cryptocurrency, altcoins, Bitcoin, security, insurance, all the things that you would need to have a fully realized thesis, investment thesis. And that's when we were just like, man, let's find some amazing companies that invest money in the space and hold as much Bitcoin as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, man. Well, let me ask you this. Are you excited about any projects that are coming out right now or anything in your space?
Yeah, like over and over again, when we were introduced in the crypto space, ICOs were super hot at that point, and we avoided them all. I just couldn't understand why anyone would invest in an ICO simply because you got no equity, right? You were investing in an ICO for the future rights or potential to use whatever was built. So you were really donating money to engineers to potentially build something because you had you felt compelled that it was a good project, and it just didn't work. I couldn't take people's money or my own money and legitimately do that. So the ICO thing we didn't participate in. Now I'm still interested in Ethereum and the work that they're doing. You hear me talk about Rune a little bit because again, I like the things that are being contemplated around it. And then I like staking mechanisms like Decred or Tezos, simply because a lot of these assets are kind of stranded. They don't have a lot of use case. They're super volatile. So I want them to try to work for me while I'm holding them because I'm not a trader.
Yeah.
So like I have I own Rune and I stake it. The staking mechanism claims to have until they launch like 52% APY.
Wow.
Paid in Rune.
That's definitely hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, so just real talk, they're paying me $350 a week in Rune just to hold Rune.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
So I think it's interesting. As long and if it, I'm not here to pump Rune. I'm just using it as an example. I could say the same thing about Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin. If you're willing to take some risk and allow them to rehypothecate that in exchanges, you can make some additional money if you believe in a project.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your take on lending platforms like BlockFi and projects like that? Very interesting.
Yeah. So again, I'm an investor in BlockFi, so just take it for what it's worth. But I only invest in things that I use and believe in. So for me, I started to exit the stock market, I don't know, a year and a half ago. Whether that was a good idea or not, it remains to be seen because, as El Presidente is saying, the stock market just goes up. Stocks only go up. So he's getting money, and I like to get money too. So, but I've taken most of my stocks and have really jumped down the rabbit hole of real estate, hard assets, core plus real estate, which I've been tweeting about recently. And then I had a big cash position. So I bought a huge position in GUSD and put it on BlockFi and as a test. So I did that over a year ago. I took as a test $2.5 million and put it in a money market in a bank. And then I took $2.5 million cash and bought GUSD and put it on BlockFi and just held it there. And, the proof is in the interest, minus fees, minus everything. I got $5,000 in interest from my money market. I think they were paying me 0.20%. And I was getting 8.6% APY on the GUSD. So I made $215,000 in GUSD, right? Cash in BlockFi. And it's a no-brainer. Like, don't talk to me about FDIC insurance, because what backs the FDIC insurance? You can't put $2.5 million in one money market account because you only have $250,000 FDIC anyway. And I may be oversimplifying that, but for me, I'm young enough to take on that kind of risk. You guys are young enough to take on that risk. I'm nowhere near retiring. So I'm trying to maximize my efficiency in terms of my earnings. So I can work, I can get paid per hour. I can make investments. Those investments can get paid. I can have some conservative things. And I think holding cash or money market investments are super conservative. So why not maximize their potential? If I can tell you, you can get 8.6% APY on a super conservative investment vehicle that's highly liquid, why wouldn't you do that?
For
Yeah, it
sure.
makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I just recently put out a tweet saying that I just switched employers, but I stopped contributing to my 401k just so like I have excess money so I could start accumulating more Bitcoin.
Yep.
And me and Cody are both like located in New York, so like we're out of like Celsius, BlockFi and stuff like that. We
Yep.
can start contributing to that. So as soon as I get down to North Carolina, that's going to be the first thing that I start doing. But you know, why would people want to tie up their money like that? It just doesn't make any sense, especially when you're getting like 0.02% or something ridiculous like that. It makes no sense.
You know, I segment life, and I was fortunate enough to do this in my own life. You kind of block it off into decades, and you know, in your pre-20s, you're getting your education. You may continue to get advanced degrees in your early 20s or late 20s. If you're continuing to get a really high-level professional degree, it may go into your early 30s. But at some point, you have to start making money. Then you're going to decide to potentially get married, buy a house, have kids. So you're not saving, you're spending a lot. Hopefully, you continue to make money. And then there are certain investment strategies that make a lot of sense along that road if you just think and plan. And I'm offering kind of those investment concepts to people now because I'm just looking back. Like people are saying, like, how old are you? And I'll tell them. And then I'll say, well, here's where I am in my life, and this is what I did. Like when I bought a home, I lived in that house for more than 2 years, and I sold it. And waited till I was married when I sold it, and I was able to capture up to $500,000 of that upside without tax, which is a huge amount of money if you think about it. You can do that every 2 years, I believe, and capture that tax-free tax-free arbitrage on your house. So you can, because I don't think a house is a great investment, actually. You know what I'm saying? So if you can use leverage, buy a house, you're going to do improvements, hopefully, or potentially to your house. And if you're there for a certain amount of time and it starts to appreciate and you're able to capture that in profit, why not do it? But you have to know about the strategy. You know, you have to understand it. So these things about, you know, deploying money at a certain time of your life when you can be highly tolerant of risk, that risk environment tolerance kind of starts to collapse as you get older and get married, start having kids, etc. You just have to try to figure this all out. So I'm just trying to share these little sound bites with people now because I can't take on like these one-on-one requests that people keep hitting me up in my DM, like, hey, can I work with you? Or can I work for you? Or will you mentor me? I can't, but Twitter allows me to kind of just share things that have worked for me.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, man.
Yep.
So what was it? You know, that's incredible advice, right? Like you've experienced all of this, right? You've been highly successful and now you want to give back to people.
And by the way, I was a terrible student. Like I could give a fuck. I could give a fuck about school. Like I only went to school because I wanted to be a pro soccer player. Like that's the only, and I didn't even, I was ready to skip college. Like I got recruited to play in Canada, to play soccer in Canada. And it just didn't work out for me because I was just not disciplined enough. I was chasing girls and drinking and got in trouble and they sent me back. I just never really committed to school. I think my first semester at university, I got like a 1.2 grade point average. First semester. The coach sat me down. He's like, bro, you're going to be on academic suspension and out of here if you don't get your shit together.
And that's a common theme that we see with like plenty of entrepreneurs, right? Like that's something you hear Gary Vee talk about all the time, right? He was like a straight C or D student growing up and everything. But there's something like about entrepreneurs that are wired differently like that, where, you know, it doesn't make sense just to study and like abide by like, you know, what the school system is telling you to learn about. And then ultimately you do whatever it is that you're passionate about and you become highly successful about that. So
Yeah.
what was it? So like, you know, you're in college or you're trying to play on the soccer team. You're basically flunking out. How did you make that pivot in your life from, you know, being like deemed as like a failure, right? And then just ultimately just going at it like 1,000% and then, you know, laughing at everyone after 14, 15 years.
Yeah, I think it's a series of events, but I just got serious. I started to think about some of the conversations I had when I was younger. I thought I may want to be a doctor. I had some really interesting advice, and I just started to to act like someone who wanted to be a doctor. Like, you can't behave the way I was behaving and get into medical school. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I hate to make it so simple, but that's really what it was. Like, all the energy I was putting into trying to be a professional soccer player, I just poured it into learning my academics, my extracurricular activities, not chasing girls and drinking all the time, acting like an idiot. And that worked out for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people that are, hitting you up? Hey, can you mentor me? Like, I want to make money too. Like, you're posting, like, you got a Lambo. I love the Wu-Tang on the side of it, of course. You're trying to encourage people, right? You want people to be successful, right? And they're hitting you up. How do I do this? How do I do this? What advice do you give them to be like, listen, you need to get your shit together and you need to do X, Y, and Z to start building capital, and then be smart about learning how to deploy that?
Yeah, the fun thing for me is to go where you are. So I try to meet you where you are and develop kind of a unique strategy to get to your dream. So it's like, let's find out where you are. I'm going to face those harsh realities with you. I'm not going to let you sugarcoat it. We're going to figure out where you are. And from there, we can get wherever you want to go. Just time, energy, focus, and having a plan. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. But a lot of people aren't honest with themselves. They either think they're too good or think, they have all these dumb excuses for why they haven't been successful. Like, I just don't accept any of that stuff. And if they're willing to kind of be honest and authentic, you can do anything. I'm telling you, like, for someone like me to have, knock on wood, the opportunities that I've had, and it wasn't all through my own doing. I've had tremendous help along the way. It's crazy. Like, anyone can do it. I'm from, my mom's Sicilian. Dad left when I was first born. Lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, as we were talking about before, in Queens, New York, Borkel Place. I mean, shithole, like absolute shithole. All I ever heard when I was younger is, got to get out of here. Got to get out of here. That's all anyone ever said. We got to get out of here. Got to get out of here. And eventually my mom just loaded us up in a station wagon and moved to Florida. And that was it. But we didn't have anything. And, I just knew that being wealthy was a solution to all the poverty and nonsense that I saw. Like, for me, and I was trying my best to blow it up. You know what I'm saying? I was trying my best to perpetuate those same kind of failure, dumb activities that kept people like me and my whole family in the exact environment that they were always in. Thank goodness, I broke it. I don't, through just a moment of listening.
Yeah. Well, I think this might be interesting. And if you're open to it, and Cody, if you're cool with it as well, I'm down to be like 1000% transparent with you. This might be good for for our audience as well, because I feel like I have a similar background to a lot of people where, I'm currently an employee and my dreams and aspirations are to be something as an entrepreneur or an investor. And, there's something like missing there that a lot of people are, whether they're lying to themselves or they just don't know how to go about it. So it might be of value.
Yeah. So what do you do?
So I used to work at EY. My background is in securitization, but while I was there for 6 years, I also worked in the blockchain group. So I was getting some cool experience working with like some major banks and working on some cool projects. I started doing that in around like 2016, when I first started mining as well. Once I learned about blockchain, I started going down the rabbit hole, sick. So I was trying to transition into that blockchain group as quickly as possible and make that like my full-time job, because I think, it's emerging tech. It's really sick. And they're like, no, we can't do that right now. We're not getting the projects in as quickly as we can. We have like a lot of developers we need to support. So you need to also be doing securitization as like 75% of your time. So I was like, screw that. Like, I don't want to do that. So I recently just left there to go to another management consultant firm just to sharpen up some different types of skill sets that I wasn't getting.
Yep. And is that like as an independent contractor or an employee?
No, it's an employee.
And then finally, or next, like, what does success look like to you? Like, what's success? Is it Lambos? Is it having freedom? Is it, that's really important, because wealth and success isn't just about money.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's something for me too, right? And like a lot of our audience, they'll always be like, win Lambo, win Moon, because like they want those fancy things. But like I come from a background as well where like we didn't have a ton of money growing up, and I saw my mom literally like start drooling one time over seeing like a Subway sandwich, because like we literally couldn't afford that, and we were like living in a good place out in Long Island and stuff like that, but we just didn't have cash like extra to spend. So for me, would I love to have a Lambo? Like, absolutely. But I want financial flexibility. Like, I don't want to be like an employee. Like, I want to escape that rat race, which I feel so many people want to do.
Yep. So, I mean, again, I think this advice will work for you, and it'll probably work for lots of folks. I love the book Cashflow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if you've read it, but it will apply perfectly to your life. And again, these are things that happened to me a long time ago that changed my thinking. I had a paradigm shift. And then for me, it was just like reps in the gym. You want to build a muscle, you got to pull the reps. But it's it. Like right now, the safest quadrant to be in is this employee quadrant. It's not super safe, but it's safe, right? Because you have the 401k, you've got the IRA, you've got insurance. There's people providing for you. And as long as the business continues to be viable and you contribute to it, you're going to be okay. This inflection point, though, the stress that you're feeling right now about wanting to move on and potentially maybe starting your own business, is that something that you may be interested in?
Oh, for sure. And it's just like trying to figure out like the right path to go down.
Right. So let's not even think about what that business is. Let's just say that you jump in the pool. You're going to start a business. You figured it out, right? It's a super dangerous place to be self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really interesting thing to think about. Self-employment, you're taking on all the risk. You're having to pay everyone else, not yourself. Most of the time you underpay yourself. And you start to leverage your own life, and eating what you kill isn't a place you want to be for very long, because when times get tough, you can lose it all, right? So the transition from being self-employed to being a true business owner has some nuances to it that are important to explore. I went through the same thing. When I dropped out of Yale, I moved back to North Carolina, and I went to First Citizens Bank, borrowed like $325,000 from them, all the money they could lend me or would lend me. And I went to an auction and bought a post office in a town called Hope Mills, North Carolina. I spent two-thirds of that money to buy the post office. The rest of it I used to upfit the post office and turn it into the first urgent care. I worked in that urgent care full-time, seeing patients. So this was my self-employment. I worked nights in the emergency room to pay my bills, right? Because I wasn't even paying myself in the urgent care, because I had anything that we made above and beyond our operation expense. We just had to bank and reinvest so we could grow. As soon as I could open up my second, my third, my fourth, my fifth, my 10th urgent care, that's where you become a true business owner. So it's that event of figuring out something, going all in, risking it all, making sure the systems work, making sure the systems are scalable, pulling the reps, building the muscle memory, and then scaling. Once you get some scale, you then protect yourself. You've got diversification. You've got multiple revenue streams coming in. There's no one point of failure at that point. So that, to me, is real business ownership. It's not when you're pulling hours for dollars, but you're actually looking at the whole business, pulling levers to make money. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that is not rocket science. It's not a secret. You don't have to do anything extraordinary to pull that off. You can open a pizza place, then open up multiple pizza places. You could buy rental properties and have multiple rental properties. This is something that can be done. You just have to have risk tolerance. Something else I've said to people is your success along this continuum of success is predicated on your capacity to deal with bullshit. Mm-hmm. The people who deal with massive amounts of bullshit and stress make massive amounts of money.
And what do you tell those people who aren't willing to deal with that bullshit, but they claim I want to be an entrepreneur. Like they're lying to
Being
themselves.
honest. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where I would say, like, you're not being honest to yourself. Come back to me when you've been humbled, when you really crash, when you're at rock bottom, and then we can talk, but you're not being honest. And that's 99% of people.
Mm-hmm.
They talk this game like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to own a business. Take a second mortgage on your house. Sell all your stuff. Sell everything that you have of value. Work 2 jobs. Work all night. Work till you pass out. Like people say this is unhealthy. These are bad suggestions, but that's reality. Like I've never met a successful entrepreneur that hasn't risked it all twice to get to where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. And it depends how badly you really want it, right?
And then it's hard to keep it. If you've talked to multimillionaires or billionaires, they've gone from being a billionaire to a multimillionaire to a billionaire again. They've had to kind of ebb and flow this thing because dealing with market cycles over time is really hard. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. 20 years. Like my Uncle Joe, he hit me one time. He's like, oh man, your cousin's like you. He's doing it. I was like, oh really? What's he doing? This was some time ago, like, oh wait. Oh, he's selling mortgages. I said, oh, he's in that credit default swap business. He's selling mortgages to people who shouldn't be getting mortgages. That's my cousin. I was like, nah, Uncle Joe, he's not like me. Oh, but he's got that Mercedes, man. And I was just like, whatever. Yeah. Dude's a clown. My cousin is a clown. Uncle Joe, I said it.
But I think Cody could relate to a lot of this too, right? Because he's never been an employee before. Cody, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like you've taken all that risk on yourself and like you've dealt with a lot of this shit, not to like the same extreme, but
no, definitely not. Yeah. I did that straight out of the military. Basically started my own little creative agency, started touring around, shooting a lot of shows, couldn't scale, and it was super tough to scale. So ended up backing down on that and then started like a small media business, helping people build their social media out. And now it's scaled to a pretty decent size. And hopefully, even with this COVID nonsense and the civil unrest, we're still kind of at a base level here, but looking to scale more, hopefully soon when the world gets back to normal.
But why did you decide to do that? Why did you decide to leave the military and not just make a career out of that? I mean, war business is a great business.
Yeah, ended up getting hurt, unfortunately, and had to leave. I was going to be a pilot, so I was actually about to enter to be like a Black Hawk pilot, but unfortunately got a little jacked up and had to bounce. So
got it.
That's how that worked out.
And then what drove you though to not just get a civilian job?
I just had a very much creative passion, and luckily I had a few friends that were touring around with a few bands, and they knew about my background in videography and photography, so to join along. So ended up hiring a few people under me to start videotaping and putting out all this content during these shows, and made that kind of a small business just off chance. It was something I knew just growing up.
Did you have to do anything like as a side hustle to support the primary business?
I was a bartender at night.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like these are the authentic struggles that I try to get to, because people don't hear that. They just think, oh, you left the military, you got hurt. Sorry that happened. Thank you for your service. And then you just started this other business, and you put a lot of effort in and it worked. No, I mean, there's a backstory there of like, how did you raise capital? How did you pay your bills? How did you survive? Did you defer doing things to make this thing work?
Straight up couch diving, lived in my buddy's van, living off of basically savings. Like I was homeless for a while still doing this like side business and still bartending at random joints where these shows were stopping at. Like I was probably putting in I was just working 7 days a week like an animal, and doing like taxi driving on the side too. So
yeah, I mean, look, if you don't want to start a business, I read this book. I wish I could I can't recall the title, but I read it a long time ago, 25 years ago. It was like How to Become a Millionaire by 40. And it had nothing to do with starting a business. It had everything to do with working 2 full-time jobs. and living off of the salary, one half the salary of one job, and how to structure your life up until 40 to have $1 million of cash in the bank. It's super doable. Just with work ethic, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But again, unless you had someone to back you, you were born out of money, or I don't even know how. You have to go on this road that I'm saying I went on. Cody's saying he's gone on, and you're on. It sounds like as well. It's this road of some amount of self-sacrifice, a very clear initiative and focus, and tons of work ethic. Just tons of work ethic.
Yeah, and it's been hard because like a lot of people's idea has been distorted over the past couple of years, especially with that like ICO craze of 2017, right? So many people just got stupid rich like overnight, like just out of dumb luck. So a lot of people just don't realize that like, hey, that's not sustainable. Like people just get lucky, and most of the times they're just going to blow through that money, like, and just end up in that beginning spot anyway. So
yeah, I can't say I'm sad that the ICO kind of craze is kind of over. And it seems like there are more legitimate projects that are being built, but it's taking time to do it. So I think there's a ton of real projects going on in the crypto world right now that we need, that are still infrastructure stuff, not the next like thing that doesn't exist. I think we're far from that right now.
So with that being said, let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit, right? Like, where do you see that going, right? I mean, we have this halving event that just took place. Plan B, stock to flow model. I think you're following it pretty closely. I am. Cody is as well, right? We're essentially supposed to be triggered upwards over the next year or so. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty vocal, and the stuff I'm saying now isn't something that I arrived at a few months ago. These are ideas and concepts that we built our investment thesis for Morgan Creek Digital on 2.5 years ago. So I've been waiting for these events that are now October. Like I've been pretty vocal saying that I expect us to hit a new all-time high by October of this year. So right now we're trading kind of sideways down at 93, 9,400 range. So I'm saying that we'll 2x where we are now by October. I think we'll have some challenge of $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2021. And I'm saying that we'll be at 288,000 or so by the end of 2024. And that's where I have a lot of conviction around. So I'm out raising money from institutions, qualified purchasers, accredited investors to support that thesis. And I'm investing in companies that will continue to move the expansion of the space in that direction.
So when you're having these conversations with like accredited investors and big institutions, and you're telling them, hey, like you see this asset that's worth $9,500 right now, let's just call it, and you see it going to 288K in a few years, like, are they laughing at you? Like, what are those conversations like?
I think it takes a ton of education. So the space and those who have been successful raising money in the space, you have to have a great capacity to teach. And Mark is a fantastic speaker. Pomp is fantastic speaker as well. And when I say speaker, I mean someone who can take complex theories or concepts and synthesize them into digestible sound bites that resonate with people. So they're not laughing, but they're not moving quick. I can tell you that. We are a group that lays claim to having some of the first institutional investors that have invested. So we've got public pension funds, hospital systems, big insurance companies, endowments, universities that have invested in our fund. But we still have a lot of work to do. We're out here still raising capital. There's tons of projects I want to invest in. And my greatest regret as an investor at this time going through 2024 is I just didn't raise enough money to invest in Bitcoin and these projects that we have access to, like Figure, like the work that Jack Mahler's doing at Strike. There's just so many great projects that I really do have tons of conviction in.
So what's next for you guys here, right? Like you're trying to continue raising this capital and trying to get involved with as many different projects are, but do you have like a clear path that you want to go through over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'm at this point, I have to do two things. So we're kind of like, we planted the seeds. So we've put about $130 million of capital at work. So I have to watch those companies and try to be, more than just money, so to assist them as they grow. But we're still raising capital, and I still have a tremendous appetite for investing. I want to buy a bigger position in Bitcoin still. There's a few projects I still haven't, or a few thematic areas in investing I haven't gotten real money to work in, and I'm really interested in finding companies that I can invest money in those spaces, specifically like mining, insurance. I think is really interesting to me. When I say insurance, I mean insurance from a retail perspective, or insurance products for high net worth individuals that own crypto to protect against hacks, whether it's SIM port attacks, exchange attacks, what have you. It'd be nice to have insurance programs, because adults that have assets have insurance to protect the assets. And we just haven't had that evolution. I use adults. I'm just talking about people who have assets. It's just, it's silly to think that I'm going to take some material amount of money and put it on a ledger and do what with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or paper, or, I have my private keys on a piece of paper. I mean, do what with it? Do what with that? Like, I'm serious. Like, what am I doing with that? Am I giving it to an attorney? Putting it in a safety deposit box? Am I hiding it in my shoe? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it's fun to do with this, a small amount of money. You're not going to walk around, with, $10 billion on a thumb drive and like, I have it in my backpack. That's where it's safest. It's just, no, I don't think that's right. So we have to continue to have these discussions. I love what, every day Jameson Law sends an email out, challenging, my own feelings about, air gap computers versus, using some type of a cold wallet solution, multi-sig. Like, these are the discussions we have to have, but it's an evolution.
And in your opinion, where do you see that going?
Well, for me, I have a very unpopular opinion in this space. I'm an investor in this space because I love the concepts of banking the unbanked, giving people financial options, giving people an alternative to the traditional system. I'm not that interested in all of the discussions around circumventing AML and KYC, anti-money laundering, and know your consumer. So the privacy and total anonymity that's offered by things like Monero, or what our friend John McAfee is shilling on the Ghost exchange. It's just not that interesting to me. And I personally think it's a non-starter. I think that the United States government is not going to allow you to do completely anonymous transactions. They're going to do their best to get their taxes, know what you're doing, and the world's moving to more transparency, not less transparency, in everything we do, every communication, every move, every transaction. They want to know it all. So if you want to stomp a mud hole in this whole industry's ass, continue to push total anonymity around transactions, and they will stop that. And it's just, again, I don't know where you guys, fall in the scope of privacy, but that's just my feeling. So I'm not able to invest in those companies that are preaching that. I've made some investments in chain analysis, which is unpopular. But it's, if you've ever been hacked, like I have, I have an active lawsuit against AT&T right now. You want some form of chain analysis. You want to find out who stole your crypto and where it went.
For sure.
Been there.
Yeah, you want to know. You don't want to be like, oh, there's no recourse because it's totally anonymous.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, cool. Jason, this was awesome. We really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you, just walking through my background and giving that advice and those tidbits. I think that's going to be very valuable for the audience. But what's one key takeaway that you really want them, just people to just start thinking about, whether it's blockchain, whether it's Bitcoin or entrepreneurship or anything like that?
Well, right now, the biggest thing I want people to think about is the power of kindness and compassion, because I really am suffering watching what's happening, and I'm not taking a position. I'm just saying we have to return to some decency, tolerance, kindness, compassion, human love, because what's happening now, people, night sticking and kicking and fighting and burning, like I can't tell the difference whether, I don't want to say it. It's very difficult to see this because it's not natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm personally want to see unity, progression, tolerance, coexistence. All of these things are fundamentally important for our society to progress. And what's happening now is probably necessary to make change, but it's hard to watch.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, people, this is like the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Like something needs to change at this point. And I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in my opinion, I don't think like, the rioting and like the looting is the right course for that, but we need some type of awareness, and whether that's peaceful protest or, people speaking out on social media and just starting that discussion and then taking it from there. So I agree with you 1,000%. That's definitely something that we need as a society just to move on and grow and get better.
Yeah, through my experience, the rioting and the action that's being taken, we actually lose rights. We don't gain them. And that's the sad part. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you see what happened after 9/11, we got the Patriot Act. Like we were left with the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act instituted globally AML KYC. And so the US government at any time can say you're doing business with terrorists, and they can shut down your bank and seize all your financial assets, right? What I fear is happening now with the riots and all the things that have been pushed and the pandemic and the way we've responded to the pandemic is we're going to get track and trace.
Yep.
Right? So you're going to lose your ability to move around space semi-anonymously.
Mm-hmm.
And the government is going to say, well, it's a matter of health for us to track you and trace where you're going. It's very sad. Like I hope that's not what happens. You see large companies right now backing out of the room on AI and facial recognition stuff because they see what's happening, like the
Mm-hmm.
power of facial recognition. Every building's going to recognize who you are. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
Minority Report happening right before our eyes.
Yeah, I think it was IBM that they just backed out of it, right? Like they realized what's going on there, and yeah, I think this started happening with like Hong Kong a few months ago, and now things are just like completely exploding there. And then that's my biggest fear, like having to get ejected with like a microchip or something like that, where like it's tracked. But it's not even that, right? Like a security camera is going to be so advanced at some point that like they're going to know exactly where you are at what time, and from that facial recognition, they're going to be able to pull up your entire background, and it's crazy.
Yeah, like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can tell you this again through my life experience. Like every movie you've seen, every science fiction movie you've seen, and every one of these weird kind of, I don't know, almost memes that are on the internet, they're based in some form of a potential reality. And I enjoy having discussions with people like you all and exploring those realities. Like someone sent me a fake lecture that Bill Gates was doing. And it was like back in like, I don't know, 2013, something like that. It was a long time ago, but he was fake lecturing to like the CIA or some military group. And I don't know if you've seen this, but he was lecturing on creating a vaccine that worked through a rhinovirus that would change religious radicals. And it would literally work on a spot in the brain. They had isolated some chemicals that caused people to have a predisposition for radical behavior and thought.
Wow.
And the vector, the delivery mechanism of this vaccination was going to be a rhinovirus or the flu.
Ooh.
Think about that. A biological weapon delivered by a flu you have no immunity to against your enemies. Sounds insane. I don't know.
When we look back, though, I mean, lobotomies were a common practice.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, one of the sub kind of thoughts or thesis around the COVID-19 virus is, some type of bioweapon. Again, I don't subscribe to that kind of those kind of hardline beliefs. What I do tend to explore is the potentials. Could it potentially have been an exploratory biological weapon that got released from a Wuhan lab, and that's why we overmodulated the way we did and said, everyone stay at home, don't move, don't go, and we shut down the global economy because we just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe just crazy talk.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, right? Like, even like you said, like that's like a fake lecture that he was giving, but the technology is just so advanced at this point that like, you don't know what's real and what's not real. So
no idea. I literally watched it and I was like, this is bogus, but I'm sure 50% of people that saw it thought it was like a real kind of lecture from like, early 2010 about, extinguishing radical religious thoughts.
what a time to be alive.
Thanks again, man.
Wow. It's wild.
Yeah. All right. Again, Jason, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to chat with us. For our audience who does not currently follow you, how can they learn more about you, the companies that you're working on, and follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, just check me out on Twitter at JWilliamsFSTMED. And don't DM me about being work. But I promise you, if you DM me, I'm going to read it, most of it, and I will try to hit a topic that's interesting. Because I really do. I enjoy Twitter is awesome because it allows me to kind of write a little bit, explore some things I believe, some things I don't believe, get people's reactions. It's a really cool medium. I don't use Facebook. I don't use Instagram anymore. Because Twitter is almost like another job.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. So I appreciate you guys, what you do, and give me a chance to talk a little bit about Morgan Creek and Bitcoin and rhinovirus.
Thanks again, man.
No, for sure, man. Listen, you're one of the good guys in crypto. So the more conversations we could have with people like you, it's very encouraging to see that the space is headed in the right direction. So
I appreciate that.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.